Assalamu alaikum. I would like to thank all the participants. I'd like to appreciate the efforts of CXO who have actually arranged this wonderful event and the presentation for all of us. So I have with me Mr. Janjua from PayPro, Mr. Noshad, Pakistan's first BNPL company, Mr. Shayaan. He looks very younger, but he's been doing this business for ages now. So so the topic we have two interesting topics. First one is why COD is still, still one of the favorite payment methods for the consumer, for the customers. And the second one, which is very demanding, or something which is getting traction in Pakistan, this is consumer financing, or I'll call it BNPL. So I'll start with the BNPL, and I think no one is in the better position to comment on BNPL other than Noshad. Noshad, when I talk about BNPL, so we have seen, BNPL technology or platform emerging in, contemporary markets, even in South Asia. In India, we have seen the growth of BNPL. In India, all alone, there's a market of $3 billion, and Klarna processing around $45 billion, right? So what is BNPL? I'd like you to tell us first, for the end user, for the consumer, what BNPL is and how does it facilitate merchants and as well as customers?
Thank you, Adnan. Thank you for the question, and hello all. Buy now, pay later, I think in Pakistan, it had been happening always. It was not a new thing. The modus operandi has changed.
Yeah.
How the journey has changed. The offering towards consumer has changed. Surma Walas of Pakistan, Boss Furniture of Pakistan, Imtiaz Supermarket of Pakistan, banks of Pakistan, they had been doing installments since ages.
Yeah.
But the only difference is they had been charging consumers. True, buy now,
Mhm.
pay later company, they do not charge consumers. They do not take profits from the consumers. Rather, they increase the average order value of the merchant, they increase the sales of the merchant, and they take the minimum discount rate or the commissions from the merchant. That is the main difference. As in Pakistan, I think that credit cards are not happening. 80 to 90% rejection rate is there. People would like to take a lot of things on installment, be it electronics, be it apparel, be it cosmetics. However, when they get charged from the banks, they are not. It's not very soothing experience. When they are
Mm,
not charged, obviously there's a no-brainer. That is
mm,
why this market is has kept on growing and growing. It's like $250 billion market right now. And
mm.
Pakistan, obviously because of the population and the boom in e-commerce, has a lot of potential in this area. So in a nutshell, any buy now pay later company, it does not charge from any consumer. Rather, they take
Yes.
commissions from
Yeah.
the merchants. It is not the burden on consumer. It is a
Yes.
partnership with the merchant. Yeah.
So what we can say that the business was already there, the product was already there in the shape of different services offered by either banks or some other companies, but you have actually transformed. So BNPL is an innovative model in which product remains same, but they have changed the perspective, and customer is happily using it without any charges which are passed on to the customer.
Exactly. And then because of the technology rails, the user
Mm.
journey becomes different than the legacy models.
And as
Like
I
how,
understand, you people have also obtained license from from SCCP to become NBFI.
yes, we are the first buy now, pay later registered non-banking financial company of Pakistan by SCCP.
Mm.
And
Okay.
we had have a great support from them.
Okay. So, Shayan, I'd like to come over you. Since this BNPL has to be plugged in with e-commerce player, right, to reach to the consumer. So, and as I know, as I understand from different markets, if e-commerce player starts providing BNPL service to its merchant, to its customers, so generally they get 2x, 3x growth at minimum. So, what are you offering BNPL services within your platform, or what is your take about that?
So I personally feel that, BNPL definitely has a lot of potential in Pakistan. It's just that in our case, so we are not at the moment. And the reason primarily is because we are structured in a way where our margins are less than what the markup is like for the merchant, right? So generally, vendors like us or marketplaces like us who relatively have a high basket size, we're mostly within the electronics bracket. So in that, usually the margins are on the slightly lesser side as opposed to other products, whether that is food or that is cosmetics and few other categories in which this could perfectly work really well, even apparels for that matter. But there are certain categories in which it is challenging, not just here, but even across the world. Electronics is usually one of those categories which is quite complex, I would say. But we are seeing the appetite. We're just waiting for the right time where we feel, all these products need to be introduced to our customers. At the moment, we are working with third-party installment providers who are technically doing what they're supposed to do, which is buy now, pay later. But it is in a different experience that we are offering, because it is accessible for pretty much everyone. The person does not need to have a credit card. Based on certain checks, he could go to our partner and utilize the installment opportunity if he wants to. So that's something that we've been doing over the years, and that has worked out well. But in terms of making this switch, and in that case, the customer is paying the extra amount. It's not us basically kind of covering up for it, because majority of the customers in Pakistan still wants to pay upfront and buy the product. But there are few customers who have an appetite for installments. For those, we are letting them pay the extra amount and take that facility. So it's more of a service. If they want that service, then they pay a little extra. If they don't, then that's how it is at the moment. But as with passage of time, as BNPL players become much more common and a lot more people are using it, and we started to basically get that kind of demand coming in from the customer, then I guess we have to kind of take that route at some point in time. But I think we are just waiting for the right time at the moment.
Okay, so Janjua, I'd like to ask you one thing during the conversation which I was having with Shayaan. So what I've also felt, being a payment gateway of Pakistan, generally merchants or corporates are not willing to pay. I've seen in the space of payment gateway where internationally, if any merchant wants to avail the services from PayPal or checkout or to checkout, the standard rates are 3% plus per transaction charges, right? But in Pakistan, we have already seen we are one of the, we have started to fight for MDR as payment service providers. So why there is too much reluctance from the merchants or from the service players, and they're not willing to pay for the services? And you've been in contact with lots of SMEs.
Well, Adnan, I find that we are actually not facing this problem from most merchants. And I wanted to apologize to Shayaan. I meant HomeShopping earlier, not ShopHive. So, sorry about that. But basically, Adnan, we are not facing problems from merchants on MDR at all. The problem actually comes from the fact that there is a lack of credit cards, and that is why merchants don't want to actually get a gateway. Because one, there's a lack of credit cards in the market. I think the 1.7 million credit cards, or
Absolutely.
if you around about there. Then there's a lack of e-commerce enabled cards also. So there are Union Pay cards and PayPack cards. Now they are also a significant number. They've now formed a significant number. So those cards are also not enabled for online. The gateway for Union Pay and PayPack there's only one company offering that service, and that's soon to be launched. It's not ready yet. So we only are left with Visa and MasterCard as the options for you have to have a Visa MasterCard to be able to transact online. Then there's another key problem, which is the fact that most of our merchants are undocumented. They're not regulated businesses. And that is why when you look at the State Bank's report on officially
registered
e-commerce, so the number is dismal. Then we look at each other and we say, no, that's not true. Those numbers can't be real. And then they're not, because you see a lot of these, for example, gateways or rather payment spaces such as Food Panda and such as other sort of aggregation companies, they're all providing gateway services essentially to these entities. Now, a lot of food does get delivered COD, but then again, a lot of it is also on cards. So I'm just saying, if you just add one entity to the number that State Bank has put down, you would realize that Food Panda is also providing a gateway to all the merchants on its platform. And so is the case with Kareem, for example, all the, Daraz, for example, all of these are essentially marketplaces, and these marketplaces then provide payment gateway services to the people who are acting as merchants. So the other problem is, okay, these are the bigger problems around just to set the stage. Now, coming to the merchant side, there are also some other issues in terms of getting a direct gateway. Merchants need to deal with banks, and banks take a long time. I'm sure when you were trying to integrate with the bank that you are providing a gateway from, it took you a while. There's a lot of hoops you have to do, and there's a lot of integration processes that you need to do. Although things are getting better, but that is a key impediment for a merchant to actually go to a bank and say, hey, give me a gateway, and then integrate it and then make it work. And then there are other issues that come after that. Also, there's fraudulent transactions that are another problem that the merchants face. And then also, when you are doing transactions internationally, then there are other supply chain and logistical issues. For example, if you're exporting something from Pakistan, like a leather jacket or some other item, those are also some key problems that the merchant size faces. Now, I think I've covered the merchant size quite well. First, I've given the base and then talked about the merchant side. Now, I'm just going to touch upon the consumer side. This is a 1-hour conversation, but I just wanted to get my side through so we can all have a conversation from my perspective as well. So essentially, what I feel is the consumer side is also, there's a lot of trust issues. And the biggest question in the mind of a consumer is, will I get the right product and in the committed time frame? Now, this is the key question that the consumer has going in their mind when they're ordering something online. Now, if it's COD, it gives them a little bit of comfort. If they've already paid for it, then they could be in for an issue. But anyway, that's a perception thing as well, because the consumers can actually call their bank and call back a transaction and cancel it or call it a fraudulent transaction, etc. But these are some issues. There are people are not comfortable with the credit card online. Also, there's also this aspect of information leakage. And the third and the last thing that comes to my mind is, they're also not used to the experience of going online and buying. Now, that's a key issue. One thing I'd like to circle back to as a general problem also is the problem of the fact that there are a lot more unbanked women in Pakistan than men, and a lot of women buy or most of the stuff that we sell online is in that area of like fashion, accessories, lifestyle, which the women need to buy. So, and since they are unbanked, they don't have a card, or they probably don't have a credit card for sure, because maybe they're housewives and they don't work. So those issues then kind of triple or kind of snowball the whole idea of COD, because these women don't have a choice. They have to call in, or they have to go to a website and do this online. But so yeah, those are my 2 cents on the problems.
Okay. So as I understand that there are problems, and these problems are suffering the industries or the key contributors, which because of that industry is suffering. But we as payment gateway, you as aggregator, should focus on value-added services rather than fighting on MDRs, right? And there are bigger problems, there are bigger challenges for the industry. So, Noshad, as I understand, we all know that in Pakistan, credit card penetration is low, very low, just around 1.8 million credit cards we have in Pakistan. Approximately, we have 50 million debit cards. Half of them are not enabled for online banking, right? So you as BNPL platform, only those customers can avail your services who are online enabled customer. Am I right or wrong? And if it is right, So then how do you actually extend industry? Then it is a very small, segment of the society whom you could serve. So how do you handle it?
So by virtue of getting integrated towards bank with NEFT and Avanza, we are integrated towards the bank accounts. Other payment
Perfect.
methods like mobile wallets, Jazz, EasyPaisa, all these wallets are also integrated, and they are getting integrated day by day.
Yes.
So we have made our own checkout whereby there are all of the Pakistani APNs are there. So we can facilitate all these BNPL transactions. So we do not do BNPL obviously on cash as we speak right now.
You
Maybe in
can't do it,
future.
right? Yes.
Yeah. So demand is
So,
there. So
so
it's just 6 months, 7 months here.
for audiences, I'd like to comment on APM. So you are saying that apart of card, alternate payment methods, you have also enabled these payment methods. Either customer is using bank account and they are using wallet, they can also avail your services.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so which is fantastic. So actually you have enabled a customer to the margin of 80 million, right? Versus 1.8 million customers. So I think this is a great idea of yours. So, and one thing which comes to my mind, and how do you, if I'm a customer and if I want to avail your services and my ECIB is already in bad shape, so will you actually lend me for a BNPL service, or how do you handle it?
So it's a good question and $1 million question. So this is what
Yeah.
we say, which is a
And you
secret
have to be
sauce.
careful about the answer, because other people are also listening to it. So, okay, if you have problem with your ECIB, still I can avail BNPL service and run away.
So we, as you know already, that
Yeah.
our founder Jordan is a subject matter expert on BNPL. His last
Yeah.
assignment was VP of Sales for Klarna, and
Perfect.
we had been advised by all C-level execs of a firm, pay after pay. So we already
Afterpay,
knew that
yes.
what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the model which we have based on the algorithms and credit scoring models and the tools we use, the technology we have built through the emails we acquire
Right.
and the mobile phones we acquire, we have a hunch that what type of customer we are going
Innovative
into.
model
If you have,
to
yeah,
innovative
so if
models
you have
versus
seen,
customer.
yeah, so if you have seen our journey last 6, 7 months, which is pretty fast, by the way.
Yes.
Initially, when we started, we were approving a lot more orders. And the way we have learned now, orders are also declining based on the transactional history and the data which we are getting. And that data is based on emails and telephone numbers and other integrations which we have done.
Yes.
So coming back to your question, if the ECIB is wrong, you cannot get your shopping done. When we started, it happened. When we started, it happened because we were not integrated with all the platforms. Now we are day by day.
Okay. So, Shayaan, coming to you, since you are one of the key e-commerce players in the industry, why still we have not we have not fulfilled the full potential of BNPL? Is it the new service for Pakistani market, or people are still reluctant? As e-commerce player, you people are reluctant, or people have not understood the model? What do you say? What is your take? Why these numbers are so small? Maybe less than $100 million is the total GMV for BNPL in Pakistan at the moment versus $4 billion e-commerce potential.
And so the couple of reasons, and one is definitely that's restricted to plastics. So obviously we don't have a lot of people going around within Pakistan with plastics. But as he just mentioned, that have integrated wallets and all of that. I think it's got a lot more to do with the trust element that we have. And just because of that, people don't want to transact digitally. They want to see the goods before and then pay for it. It's just essentially that that is making people still go towards COD. That is probably 80% of the problem. And with ECAP as well, we are right now in the process of trying to work out a way where essentially people can dispute transactions, just how you could do it with your credit cards. You can call back and like State Bank has those regulations to reverse transactions, and then they're able to kind of manage that well. I don't see a reason why that can't happen with the bank, the banking transactions that you're doing. And if there is the capacity to do that, then the customer is empowered in some capacity, then I do feel that people will be transacting digitally more than even trying to do things in cash, because even dealing in cash can go wrong sometimes. And if you have a mechanism to reverse your transactions based on certain proofs, and then this is pretty common, it happens all over the world. I don't see a reason why this can't happen here. Once we have that, I think that is when digital payments would skyrocket, and not just digital payments, but even services like BNPL and all these would just definitely pick up pace. At the moment, I feel they're much better off doing it offline than online. And I think they're already doing it now. So there's a certain amount of urgency that I see. I can see this happening at different stores, and I think that's a much better strategy, because there are a lot of people coming in using POS, and then if you could convert them into installments, because the trust challenge is not there. But this whole trust issue needs to be solved before I could see any of these services really sustainably growing in the long run.
Okay. So Janjua, as you're working very closely with SMEs, either they are online players, they are school, clubs, colleges, and you really help them to go digital. So, but still, despite all these efforts, which players like you and us are trying to, eliminate cash, this is what we think day in, day out. But still, Pakistan is 95% cash-driven economy. So how can actually you think we can eliminate cash within the Pakistan, and why cash is still the favorite and cash is still king for the market, for the end consumer? You are mute, sir. आप mute हैं Janjua.
Yes, just got. So yeah, Adnan, the thing is कि देखें, number one, undocumented economy, that's a key factor that we are facing. We're a third world developing country. It's not only a problem for us. If you look at the rest of the world as well, a lot of the economies in South America, a lot of the economies in Africa, and even a lot of the economies in the Far East, they're all facing similar problems. There's a lot of people, there have been developmental issues, and hence the word third world. We've seen companies like countries like Indonesia grow out of the third world and come into the second and the first world.
Yes.
So all of these things we've seen over the last 30, since 80s, 90s, about 30 to 40 years. Now, we started a bit late in the game, and our neighbor India, we essentially started at the same point, and then we've seen growth in India, which is amazing in all aspects, not just fintech generally, in terms of all sorts of technology, etc. So there are bigger problems and bigger issues that we've had to deal with. I mean, we haven't even, the country's been is 65 plus years now, and we are young people, and we are supposed to be the ones trying to build the future for our children. So I think overall, this is a bigger problem and a bigger discussion, but coming down to a couple of points that I can think of, we are all making a difference. Avanza is making a difference. PayPro is making a difference. You're a PSO, PSP. We are a gateway, similar business. Noshad is doing his bit in terms of providing financing or embedded finance. Shayaan is representing, the e-commerce side of things. So essentially, all together, it's a game. We have to build the market, work together. And I feel, just today at Collabs, we had a conversation with the fintech, and then collaborations is the future. It is not about, there are certain ways to think that you can't, you can only do certain type of thinking in silos. If you don't talk and sort of, expand ideas, competition is good, but competition can also be very bad, especially if the country or the industry is in a nascent stage. When you haven't even developed your muscles yet and you start to just compete in the beginning, you haven't really built yourself up to that point, we are nowhere in comparison to bigger companies. And like say, if I say today, PayPro aspires to be like Stripe, for example.
Yeah.
Stripe is a very they built that business in 20 years, 15 to 20 years. They've come to where they are. PayPro is 2.5 years old. So I'm just saying things need time to build, and again, collaborations, interconnected discussions. How can embedded finance work? How can PayPro help QisstPay? How can PayPro work with Avanza? How can PayPro work with HomeShopping? These are all the discussions that we need to have more. And I feel not just the people at this forum, we are open, and we should all stay open to discuss these problems with everyone around and work collaboratively together, and then take things forward.
Okay, so basically the reason behind Pakistan is a cash-based economy is people want to hide their transaction as they perform digital transactions. So maybe businesses will come into the limelight, and maybe FPR can come up and ask them, how did you get this money? Maybe this is one of the reasons. And I really get saddened when I see that in Pakistan, there are 3.5 million SMEs. Okay. And there are only approximately 4,000 e-commerce players. So market is very small, At least अब तक हमारे पास कोई 1 lakh, 2 lakh e-commerce players should have been registered e-commerce player. So maybe that is one of the reasons. And as you said about India and Indonesia, they have already, they have paved the path for the next generation to go digital. And we have seen enormous growth in between both countries. And I think one key reason, which is very important, and which was the master stroke in those countries and in Pakistan, though late, but we are also on the track. And this is instant payment system, and this is Rust. So Noshad, you have been the banker, I know, right? So what is your take about Rust? How do you see Rust digitizing Pakistan, and Rust actually helping companies like you, PayPro, HomeShopping, like us, to innovate and work in a more collaborative manner to fight against cash?
Yeah, so I think I'm desperately waiting that Rust should be at that level whereby QisstPay is integrated with Rust directly. So the payments are transferred easily and at faster pace. The same in what happened in India, UPI, Unified Payment Interface.
Yes.
Yesterday, there was the article in Dawn that still we are 151 trillion rupees cash economy and 11 trillion on mobile and internet. So digitization and electronic money and digital money, Rust is going to play a pivotal role. There is no brainer about it. But how much they are ready right now towards technology integration, that is happening very slowly. So peer-to-peer payments, government-to-person payment, person-to-government payments, merchant-to-merchant payments, all these use cases are pretty interesting if we are integrated directly with Rust, with lower cost of transactions, which are incurred and taken from the consumers and the merchants.
Yeah, I think Rust will give impetus to alternate payment methods as well, because I can share my experience with you. As a PSO PSP, we have around 15 banks which are our partner banks, and for us to go out and close the deal, there is always chicken and egg problem. You go to merchants and you tell them that we are offering alternate payment method, so they'll ask you how many banks you have, and if you go to bank is naturally going to ask how many merchants you have. So there is always a problem. It's like walking on the wire. So Rust enables people like us or regulated entities to get access from all the banking industry, right? So we can imagine, just if suppose PayFast integrates with Rust, being a PSO PSP, so we can straight away start offering services of all wallets, all account opening players, all accounts, and then it is cheaper as well. It is instant, and you can get your funds instantly. I was having a discussion with Shayaan a while ago that Shayaan, we were having a discussion that for you as an e-commerce player, it really hurts when your money gets stuck into the system for settlement purposes. So Rust will actually resolve this problem, and since it is an instant payment system. So what is your take about Rust, and how do you see Rust as e-commerce player where you can get your funds instantly?
Right. So obviously that's going to be great for us. if we are, getting our funds immediately. So we can still do that through IBFT. We can get our access to our funds immediately, but the experience is not as good.
There are
as
frictions
it
in
should
case
be.
of IBFT.
Yes. So with RAF, definitely this challenge should be solved. I'm more concerned about what the dispute resolution mechanisms are going to play out like, because that is the need of the hour at the moment. I feel that the refund disputes management and how you can kind of pull money out of one customer's account and push it to the other one. So those are some of the things that I'm more looking forward to. I mean, if Rast would be providing us with an opportunity to kind of do that, because at the end of the day, the real challenge with e-commerce today, the entire industry that I see, is quite a lot towards the trust side of things, and that is what needs to be fixed. I mean, we can have a much faster ways to kind of make these payments or whatever, but at the end of the day, the thing which would really kind of break ways into digital side of things would definitely has to be something. If it has a dispute resolution mechanism where customers can go back, file a dispute against a transaction that they made, and they have some level of control over that transaction, I think that would be enabler. That would be an enabler which would allow people to, instead of using cash, which would then be a much more insecure way of transaction as opposed to doing it digitally. It's the other way around right now. So we completely need to kind of convert all of this. And once that happens, I think that is where people will ideally like to transact more digitally than cash.
So we keep discussing this problem, trust. Maybe one of the key reasons in Pakistan, prepayments are still not.
I'll tell you what the reason is. So the 4,000 vendors that you mentioned about, right? These are only the players who have gone on to take merchant accounts from banks. Right. Yes. In reality, we have a lot more e-commerce players, and a lot of these players are so small that they can't even go up to a bank and ask for that merchant account, because obviously the entire process is quite complicated. So not everyone immediately gets access to being that. So I think someone needs to register all these small scale players. Anyone who wants to do e-commerce based transactions, they need to, I don't know, hopefully that can happen at some point. Maybe SCCP registers them as an e-commerce entity, whether that's a sole proprietor or a private limited company, but he has to get himself a number through which he could then go on to get a merchant account. If you are in some way able to have a database of all these people trying to sell online, then yes, tomorrow, if something goes wrong, there is a way of kind of, going back to them in some way. Otherwise, anyone can go up to a courier company, open an account and start doing all kinds of things. And that's exactly what's happening. Even the courier companies are not regulated in any way, right? So either you regulate the courier players and you figure out a dispute resolution mechanism over there, so that at least people are kept secure. But that's not really changing anything. You still have a lot of cash going around. And if that's not something which people want to encourage, then a rather easier way of doing this is, yes, go digital. I don't know, like I speak to a lot of fintechs and they never talk about dispute resolution. They always talk about, how their user experience is and how fancy the app looks like. But at the end of the day, it's not solving the problems that exist within the market. If there is a fintech which solved this problem, so PayPal kind of took off because they were good at their dispute resolution. They took off with eBay, basically. eBay was one of the largest marketplaces in the US at that time. And because there were a lot of individuals selling on eBay, it was, rather like it wasn't safe to transact like that. So PayPal kind of stepped in, and PayPal said that, if you transact through us, then PayPal kind of takes that guarantee. It's called Escrow or whatever that is. But that was, a solution to a really big problem. And that's why PayPal took off. And this is pretty much the reason why AliExpress even, Alipay even took off, because there was an e-commerce platform, and then consumers wanted a secure way of transacting for a marketplace to function efficiently. And I guess that's the need or the hour here as well. Like there are a couple of marketplaces, but on all of them, you have to just, rely completely on the feedback or other things that are available online. But that's not how generally people make buying decisions. People don't want to even have that fear in their mind. that, if anything goes wrong, what's going to happen with the money that I've paid. So once that risk is mitigated for people, I see, people are perfectly ready to make these transactions online. And then I think we can see that digital transactions are on the rise, right? So it's not like people really want to hide away their funds. People even hold quite a lot of capital within their banks. So I don't see a reason why they wouldn't want to transact that money, right? So I feel once these things are there, all this is just, it's just supposed to happen.
I think you spoke one thing which really hit my mind. That was, I'd like to, Janjua, please answer this. That we have 4,000 merchants which are using payment gateway services, but there are still Facebook merchants. There are still lots of merchants which are selling on Instagram or different social media platforms. So since they don't have bank account, or maybe they are not big enough for the banks to onboard them. So are you helping those type of merchants or freelancers, Janjua, as payment aggregator?
Yeah. So, okay. So I just want to correct a couple of things. For one, we are a marketplace. So yes, the aggregation word also works because in English, when you say aggregate, it means put things together. But essentially, technically, we are a marketplace, and in that form, we are able to reach out to these clients. But since you are aware that we also have the regulator come out with merchant onboarding regulations, which are very strict. So we have to follow those as well. It is not very easy for us to just go to the very sort of Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp group selling type of merchants. It is, it's very hard to do that unless they have as Shayaan said, as long as they are a registered entity, they have a business registered or an NTN number on a sole proprietor arrangement, even we are able to at least have a discussion with them. See, the problem is that even for us, the risk lies on the company, just like it does with you as a gateway as well, because the banks that provide us their services for a gateway, they then also want us to be responsible for the funds that they've provided us or through us to another merchant. And then the reverse of the merchant providing the service product that they were supposed to give back as well. Now, if there is a gap over there, the regulatory element comes in, and then you've got the banking mutasib and the issuer bank, and then the acquiring bank, and there's like a whole bunch of issues that can come up. Now, solving them, of course, Escrow is a as we started the conversation with Escrow,
Yes.
So it's top of mind for PayPro. We are considering developing a product around it. While being at Easy Paisa a long time ago, we came up with this product also, and it's a bit tricky. It's not very easy to have an Escrow type arrangement, keeping in view the state bank's regulations. In what way can PayPro or PayFast hold money for someone else for a long time? That's something. And then what right does an entity, a marketplace or an aggregator or a payment service provider, how long can one hold that, and what are those rights? There's a bit of complication in that. So
I agree.
So the legal element comes in, and then you are in a bit of a quandary. Now, I'm not saying it can't be solved. I mean, I thought about it in a very straightforward way, where you say, okay, fine, there's some settlement amount that is sitting with the gateway, and why doesn't the gateway then just delay payment to the merchant till such time as the consumer confirms that they've received the product? That is one way of looking at it. And it seems very simple, but when you
yes, you're right. Merchants can have reservation. Why should they get their funds?
Ali, I think even
Shayaan, what do you think about Escrow service or maybe Noshad? You can both comment on that. I keep hearing about trust issues, and we have seen in other markets, Escrow has actually resolved these problems related to trust. We have seen amazing work in China, where when Escrow was launched, so people started to, prefer, or they started to pay through digital means. So is that the reason why in Pakistan COD is so high? We don't have a trusted Escrow with us in Pakistan market. Is that the reason?
I would just like to add what Ali was saying. I think even with Escrow, one can, pass over the payment to the merchant if there is an ability to pull funds back from his account once a dispute comes by. So nobody really has to hold the funds. I understand that it could be legally challenging and everything. And even abroad, like with services like Alipay or the likes of PayPal, you have access to those funds regardless. So as soon as they're paid, they land in your account. And yes, if it comes to a point where a chargeback comes in or a dispute comes in, so a certain amount is blocked, whether that is through a security deposit or whatever that mechanism is. Usually some of these larger players usually do have some sort of balance which could be blocked. So, and I think that is exactly how it is happening so I'm using a merchant account in Pakistan through a local bank, and they are very happy to pass over the payments to us every 3 days. And if a dispute comes back to us, they would inform us that there's a dispute. We would need to give in all the correct information, whether we shipped the product, whether the product had any complications, and we would respond back. And the dispute, there's a mechanism through which the dispute is resolved and the payments are released. The payments already released. I mean, the dispute is then eventually closed, right? It's settled. So I don't see a reason why the credit card companies within Pakistan can get a solution like this from the banks, and the banking transactions cannot get that. Right. So that's where I kind of, have a challenge with that. But and I don't think this dispute resolution can be done really down in the funnel through a fintech player. It needs to happen at source, whether that is so for the longest time I've been saying probably IBFT OneLink needs to do it. But now I feel, Rast could be a contender where they can potentially do it. So if dispute resolution happens at that level, only then anyone can feel very comfortable transacting for anything online, whether they are buying themselves a car or that is buying something online. There could be a mechanism for people to securely transact payments. And if something, has happened on the merchant's end, then there is a mechanism to dispute that particular transaction. I feel that's really
okay. So your 2 cents on Escrow. Noshad, you want to add something?
Our Escrow use cases are pretty different. When we started the business, the top line merchants, few of them, they asked that we should be having Escrow engagements. But the way we operate, we need not to, because already the buy now, pay later power towards merchant and consumer is much more and above beyond that. So we did not compromise on these negotiations that we need to have the Escrow accounts. As far as refunds and disputes are concerned, it is very simple. Whatever the merchant policies are, we follow them accordingly.
Okay.
And we
so you leave it to the merchant. Okay.
Yeah. So Escrow is not a hindrance in our operations. Comment on Escrow. I second what Shayaan is saying towards Rast. It's supposed to be solved through that.
Okay, perfect. So how many merchants you have, coming back to the BNPL, right? How many merchants you have which are using your platform?
So we have signed 2,150 merchants.
Wow.
We
so
started
that is approximately half of the industry has signed in such a quick time.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. We started top to bottom pyramid. We have we signed all the bigger merchants, top of the pyramid. It was not for the financial inclusion purposes initially. We had to set a precedence that even a smart consumer who is not into installment, he or she should be using buy now, pay later power for their cash flow management. And same goes for the merchants. Then, as you guys are talking about Instacom, Facebook commerce, they are started coming towards us. We had been very picky towards them too. And the merchant which we have, they have their own quality and they have their own users. That is why the platform has become so much authentic, and we added value through our technology and the processes.
So yeah, perfect. So I think it's a very good number. And just my last questions to each of you. Shayaan, you belong from e-commerce industry. So do you think there are, as we see yesterday, Imran Khan just announced e-tijarat portal, okay, for the betterment of e-commerce industry as a whole. You are also part of eCap, am I right? So
Yes.
one of the key active players of the industry, what do you think, how can we actually regulate e-commerce industry, or should it be regulated, or is it good enough to grow in such manner which is already in the way or happening at the moment? So do you think anything which needs to be
It
done?
needs to be regulated to some capacity. I mean, obviously, we shouldn't over-regulate it to kind of kill it, but some basic level of regulation does need to happen, which is in terms of even registering the place to begin with. Nobody should be allowed to just get up one fine day and start selling online, because that could be quite complicated. So there needs to be a mechanism, and I think that a lot of work has been done in the last few years or so. The Ministry of Commerce is quite actively working on this. Ms. Aisha has been playing this really great role to kind of get the regulations out first, and now there's a lot of work that is happening on that side. We simultaneously we have consolidated as a number of e-commerce stores that we've come together to form eCap, which is so we started off with 150 top tier members of that association, which would be working with the government to kind of fix the challenges that we see that the e-commerce industry kind of has at the moment. The government right now is supporting this particular segment.
Yes.
E-commerce is being spoken about. People do realize that this has the potential to really, solve for a lot of problems that Pakistan has, whether that is cross-border trade or local e-commerce. So this is definitely in the limelight. A lot of work is happening, but I still feel that a lot of basic things that still needs to happen. Just like how I mentioned about the registration, I think someone needs to register all these small and big players, so that we have a central database of who's selling online in Pakistan. And that's important because at some point in time, they will be doing things which are slightly below the belt or unethical, and they would be needed to be reached out. And I think that's a good start. A lot needs to happen on the consumer protection side of things, because as we speak, there is a lot of scams happening in Pakistan. Because we're in this industry, I know the insights, I know exactly what's happening. Because with the whole e-commerce players, the COD providers that we have, they are not same player with different names. And that would keep happening because this is how they basically get their business. So someone needs to kind of step in and kind of make sure that someone kind of regulates this or this piece.
I think
and if that happens,
I think registration of e-commerce player is very important. Unless you register someone, you can't actually overlook, or you can't really set some SOPs. But at times what happens that, as you said, scams are unfortunately also happening. If as a customer, if I order Lifebuoy, if I get Gaia soap, suppose, so where do I have to go?
Yeah, so exactly, that's the main problem right now. What is happening in reality with the industry? We have some nice, great words to say it, but the reality is that at the moment, someone can just walk to a courier company, say, "Kis naam se mera account khol de," and he can send 100 shipments, show something completely entirely different, collect millions of rupees, and shut that account, and next day open another account with the same courier company and do the same thing again. And this is happening, right? Because the courier company is getting 100 shipments, so they're very happy about it. But the customer is being frauded, and it's happening at a massive level right now. And because of this, the industry is literally dying in front of our very eyes. Like, I don't see this industry growing at a exceptionally fast pace as how it should be. I've been, doing this for the last 14 years. So I've seen this industry go over the years. So right now, because of these things, we're not doing too well.
Yes. So in your experience, what should be the real size of the industry? It is $4 billion, I think, versus $60 billion retail industry. $4 billion is this is still far less what we can actually achieve. So what should be the real size of the industry?
The real size of the industry, generally, with if you see all these countries where you have all these mechanisms in place and all of this is working, e-commerce is supposed to take up at least
10 to 15%.
10 to 15% of your retail market share. And that's very much achievable. And I think I don't see a reason why it can't happen here.
So Pakistan can easily go around 7 to 8 billion, I think, as e-commerce industry.
Sure,
okay.
Absolutely.
So,
and if the government gets involved, there are a lot of government procurement that is happening, which is not happening digitally at the moment. There is a lot of procurement related stuff that happens. So all of this needs to be digitized as well. If all of this is digitized, we could substantially see this number go up to as high as 20-30% in the next few years.
So Janjua, as I understand, you are also in the process of obtaining EMI license and working very closely with central bank. So we have seen the, State Bank has issued guide regulation for digital bank. They have earlier issued EMI license. So anything you think is still left in Pakistan, or I think it is already well furnished in this regard? Or any regulatory changes you think can improve the industry further? You are mute, please.
Luckily, I've been associated with Karan Das for about 3 years of the early days of Karan Das. So I've been privy to very close conversations on RAST as well as on the digital bank regulations as well. So it's been long in the coming. I think the processes have taken a while for the sort of regulations to come out finally, and for the digital bank, and also RAST is well thought out. This is just phase 1. There's a lot more to come. As Noshad said, there's a lot more.
Merchant to person payment, request to payment. So,
Exactly. And also PSO, PSPs like yourselves can really support the economy in terms of integrating with players like PayPro also to help integrate and sort of provide another rail which is cheaper and less costly. So these are all very, very positive things. But as I do understand that the State Bank is always looking for better ways to serve this market, and this market in particular requires a lot of attention as well in terms of digitizing all businesses, most SMEs and supply chains. They're all 80% or more than 80% is SME in Pakistan. The GDP, contributes 80% is all SME or rather MSME. So digitizing these areas is really, really needed. And I foresee, in my humble opinion, there might be some other regulatory licenses that might be coming, that we might have surprises this year on, hopefully. Other types of things that we can all benefit from the Pakistani economy generally. Yeah. Hopefully.
So Noshad, being Pakistan's first NBFI, in the space of BNPL. So you think as a regulator, there are a few things which can be improved or allow space for further BNPLs player?
So this is the first license which has been issued. It is BNPL for car, it is BNPL for home, it is BNPL for e-commerce. So it's whole 9 yards. So I think the SECP had to set a precedence for all non-licensed installment companies that it should not be operated in a gray area for the consumer protection and even for merchants and for the taxable economy. So this is the first license. The power is right at the right time. And most of the companies which I know that they are coming towards Pakistan, indigenous companies and the global companies under the BNPL space, the license is very much open. They should take the license and operate accordingly.
Okay, so just to summarize, Pakistan is at the cusp of digitization. I think RAST has been instrumental and will be instrumental for the taxable economy. And it is just a start, I feel. Last year, we have raised around $365 million. 50% of the amount was invested into e-commerce or fintech space. So this is really hot. And I think as an industry, we can grow together. And we as payment gateway, e-commerce players, BNPL, payment aggregators, or maybe marketplaces, they will actually innovate the industry, and still we are far behind what is the potential, what the real potential of Pakistan is. I really, I feel sorry for overall as an industry that why 90% transactions are cash-based transaction, and you really cannot grow as an economy. If we have to leapfrog, if we have to go towards the growing economy, so digitization is must, and hopefully we can all contribute towards this step. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
You
so
want
much.
to add something, Ali, Janjua, Shayaan, or?
No, I mean, thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts, and I think this is a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
Want to say something?
Thank you, Adnan. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Shayaan.
Thank you, Noshad. Thank you, CXO.
Let's do it more often.
Thank you, CXO. Yeah.
Thank you. Take care.
Pleasure meeting all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me over. Bye.
Bye, Shayaan. Yeah.